Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Roger's Real-Time Talkshow event. This is the climax of the season. This is the last part where we finally get into the bread and butter behind the European Union and the creation of the European Union, as well as what's going on and why we have this stuff happening over in Europe and in England, which Mark and me always debate on that one, if it's actually a part of England or Europe or not. But I personally don't think so.
uh, European Union. Difference between Europe as a continent and European Union as an organization.
Well, I mean,
No
Europe, I'm talking about Europe and
governmental
England.
structure.
I'm talking about Europe and England.
Um,
You're,
so yeah, we're still part of the continent. We haven't floated off into the Pacific or something.
yeah, you can tell we're both happy because we're at the end. We finally reached the end of it. So this long excruciating walk that I mentioned at the beginning of this season is coming to an end. And we've taken this long walk, and now we've come to the part where we've been waiting all year to get with it. So, with that being said, let me just go
I can
ahead.
see the light.
Yeah, we can see the light.
Sorry, yeah, I was going to say we can see the light.
At the end of
the
the
tunnel.
Yep. Now, where we had left off, I want to kind of go back through it just to kind of reskim it. We're not going to get too deep into it unless you want to say something, Mark, okay? But we were talking about after the devastation of Second World War, okay? Now, after all of the devastation that took place after the Second World War, European leaders basically recognized that like traditional balances of power had repeatedly failed to prevent or contain conflict. And because of that, the creation of the European coal and steel community uh, happened in the early 1950s. And this basically was like the first major attempt at institutionalizing supranational frameworks. And the claim was that it was to prevent war by binding together these same industries that also made war possible. So that was the premise behind it. Um, now, for people to understand this, they have to understand that coal and steel aren't only vital, um, they're not vital economic resources. You know what I'm saying? That's not just what they are. Um, they're also the raw materials for military production, and that was the premise that was made.
Yeah. Actually, it's not just for military, but it's for most of the societies.
Exactly.
Skies, towers don't get built. Railway tracks don't get laid.
Well,
A lot of infrastructure and get produced without these items.
well, you also have to understand too, in warfare, infrastructure is just as important as military equipment. You know what I mean? Like
I mean, even in domestic sort of peacetime.
yeah, right. Now, and like I said, I mean, it wasn't only like a vital economic resource. You know what I mean? Which that that basically says what you're saying right there. You know what I mean? But it was, you
Yeah.
know, there were also raw materials for military production, and that was the premise they went off of. Now, by placing their management under a joint authority, which was France, West Germany, Italy, Belgium, and the Netherlands, and I guess Luxembourg as well. They created a structure where no member could like secretly rearm without the others being aware of it. You know what I mean? So this was the beginning of the supranational system. Okay, and it consisted of monitoring, both practical and it seemed to be more or mostly practical, as well as symbolic, I guess. You know what I mean? Because if you look at it, it basically demonstrated for the one of the first times like a willingness to like limit their national sovereignty in order to guarantee collective security, I guess is how you could say it. But then for me, I see that also as a danger. You know what I mean? Because you look at what's going on today, and like, yeah, I mean, it might have been that way back then, but look at the results. You know, look at what it produced 100 years later. So in that respect, I don't know if that was really even a good idea back then either.
I don't know if there's an argument to say that that sort of art concept created some protections. I'm thinking in relation to you've got a single point of call, so you've got in the Cold War sense, you've got the Warsaw Pact, you've got this, you've got the NATO, and it creates a sort of framework where all NATO members know what each other's doing to a point, and all Warsaw Pact knows, and sort of creates a sort of a protection of sense.
Well, for me, it goes back to kind of, yeah, it really does, because like for me though, it goes back to what we were talking about with the pill reforms. You know what I mean? Where you know, you remember when I was mentioning about like there's people who have this mentality that if you stop people from littering on the ground, that's going to prevent them from later on thinking that they should go rob a liquor store or rob a bank. You know what I mean? That somehow it's going to you know what I mean? It's going to prevent people from doing harsher crimes later on. This is the kind of mentality that I see right there. You know what I mean? When it comes to a lot of that, I'm wanting to say preventative, but I know that the term wasn't what we referred to it the other day as being. You know, it just seems to me that they believe that. Well, yeah, I guess it is preventative logic would be the best word to say it. You know what I mean? It's like they have this preventative logic that thinks if they set up these safeguards that it's going to prevent future crimes from occurring, you know. So
that is if the safeguards work. I can think of a quite a hot news story at this present moment that I can make an argument that certain preventative concepts didn't work.
Well, I mean, also think about it like this, okay? They took and they handed the most richest freaking resources in Europe over to a supernatural um, organization. You know what I mean? And gave them that much power. So, like, too much power corrupts is what I'm getting at, basically, in a weird sort of way. You know what I mean? Absolute power
You're
corrupts
talking,
absolutely.
you are talking about the European Union. Again, you are sort of racing a bit fast, a bit
Well,
too
I
fast
mean,
forward.
look at it even back then. Okay, what would have been the two major resources, steel and coal? That would have
Yeah.
been a major power.
Oh, okay. Okay. So yeah, you're talking about the European coal and steel
You know,
blobs. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
they handed
I see you are.
an immense amount of power over to a supranational system to watch over and monitor it. You know,
Yeah, but that was only to monitor at that time.
yeah. Well,
I
I mean,
mean, I'm remembering the 80s in the Britain, where economic policy and the coal strikes, but that was always controlled by the government at the time, back in the 70s and 80s.
mhm.
It wasn't controlled by a third party external entity.
Well, I mean, the first thing is what I had left off on it. You know, was that they actually were willing to limit their national sovereignty. Okay, that was the first thing that they did with this coal and steel community. All right, um, but then what they turn around and did is they went even a step further. Okay, now the coal and steel community, they did more than just to manage these industries. Okay, they established a president for European governance that was based on prevention, authority, and incentives. Just like with the rebuilding of Europe, okay, when we were talking about giving incentives to people for their work, and if they didn't do that work, they didn't get those incentives. You know what I'm saying? Now, that's the kind of motto they pretty much stuck to. It was about prevention, authority, and incentives. Okay, and what this means is, like, member states agreed to submit parts of their economies to shared oversight. Okay, and according to them, it was supposed to be reducing the risk of competition that escalated into conflict. You know what I mean? So
Okay.
you see where this is going? Competition that escalates into conflict. What does that sound like?
That sounds like Marxism to me. That sounds like we can't have a competition just in case of a danger of conflict.
Right.
So
And
we've got to single sort of entity, a single organization. Yeah,
they have prevention,
Marxism.
authority, and incentives. You know what I mean? That right there is what really stuck out to me when I seen that. They wanted to reduce the risk of competition with escalating into conflict. They felt that conflict was the result of competition. So
Just because you have competition doesn't mean you automatically have conflict. I mean, as an obvious example, I've got a number of supermarkets in this town, and they all compete against each other, but they aren't beating down each other's doors. Uh,
Exactly.
yeah, that's a bit of a ludicrous idea.
Yep. God bless the EU, ladies and gentlemen. God bless the EU.
Oh, what we sell the European Union.
Oh, don't get all rowdy and everything. You moved a little wrong. Your microphone kind of went off there. Because, like, when you start getting all rowdy and stuff, your
Okay.
microphone starts messing up. Calm down, wild man. Calm down.
I'm calm.
Okay, so
I mean, we could always have a long conversation about the the coal industry as far as Britain is concerned in relation to Wilson and Callum, and then look at it from Thatcher. Then that would be a bit of a rowdy conversation.
well, I mean, that's actually a part of this part of the topic. So, because like, yeah, what's going on in England? Like, share that. You know what I mean? Because that's exactly what this is about. Because you got to remember, man, these people are being monitored by freaking European freaking powers, or they were for the longest time until Brexit. I'm supposing. I don't know for sure. Are they still being monitored?
What do you mean monitored?
They're being monitored by this
What sense?
supranational.
I mean, anybody can monitor economic status of a country.
You know.
That information is easily available.
Well, I mean, is the coal and steel community still in charge with a supranational system set up in England when it comes to these coal factory industries and stuff in England? You know, that's a good question.
think there's. I'm not sure about the coal. I would have to do the research. You are pushing on asking me without me doing research on this. I don't believe there is there a coal industry in the UK anymore.
That's a
I
good
think there's
question.
only one steel factory, and that was opened up. That was assisted by the taxpayer last year before. On the verge of closing, and really that's just, I don't know. You could argue the data factory being open now is just a form of performative art.
It's crazy.
Arguably, we're getting, we are getting the majority of our coal and steel from China. I believe that both the US is as well.
Well,
A lot.
coal here in the United States is horrible. Like they have treated the coal companies bad. I mean, horrible.
Yeah.
You know, I know that for a fact. I was telling you about my hometown, which is right here in West Frankfort. This town was founded on the coal mines. You know what I mean? If it wasn't for the coal mines, this town wouldn't even be here. You know, and they had a monument for coal miners, people who died in the coal mines. You know, and I've said this in a previous episode, so I'm not going to drag it out too long, but basically, and don't get me wrong, I have no problem with veterans, all right, but I mean, they took and got rid of the monument for the coal miners who died in those mines and replaced it with a veterans monument. You know what I mean? So they replaced one with another because they didn't want people to freaking honor the coal miners. You know, like it was something that they wished to forget. You know what I mean?
I should have refreshed my memory on this beforehand. But what was it? during, I think it was Callahan's, Wilson, possibly Callahan's leadership of prime ministership of Britain between 76 and 79. I think it could be actually Wilson, so previous 74 to 76. A lot of emphasis was pushed upon unions. Both of these were Labour Party governments, and a lot of these were pushed on. A lot of power was pushed on unions, and unions, as we are starting to see yet again in this country in a different form, unions had an extreme amount of power when it came to employment and economics, and which creates a sort of over inflation or over supply of coal, or oversupply of coal, which there wasn't a sufficient demand, and the unions sort of had control of that. When Thatcher came into power, she could see, or the Conservative Party could see that there was a serious economic issue there, where the unions had too much power, and the supply of coal was unsustainable due to a lack of demand. So she attempted, and successfully attempted, to reduce the power of the unions and restrict the amount of coal supply. Hence the strikes and the riots that was quite common during the first half of the 1980s. And at the time, the European Economic EEC, the European Economic Commission, European Economic, I can't remember the third one.
Community.
Yeah, thank you. As from then, were just an economic body. It wasn't a political body in its own right. It was just an economic sort of regulator.
See, this is what I love, because I've heard you say this stuff so many times. I even set it up in my talking points to where I could bring that up. So it is going to be a part of the talking conversation tonight. Just so you know.
I should have refreshed my memory beforehand.
Well, don't worry about it, because that's kind of what my job was here. You know what I mean? Pull up the information, read it out to you, kind of give you the stuff, and then just go off of just conversation. You know what I mean? Don't worry about all that. You're good. I mean, what you just said right there was a mouthful. That was good stuff. You know what I mean? It was. So now, authority was institutionalized in a high authority, which could make binding decisions on coal and steel production. Okay. Now, the incentives that I mentioned before were built into the system as well, as cooperation, open access to large markets, and stabilized prices. And this is, to me, what I was talking about with monopolies, when they say words like incentives. Okay, like if you cooperate, you get these incentives that nobody else can get unless they cooperate too. You see what I mean? So, and when you cooperate and you get these incentives, it's as cooperation. You know what I mean? It opened access to larger markets that you didn't have available to you, and stabilized prices. You know what I mean? So what they're wanting to do is they're wanting to make stable prices that uh, aren't uh, causing any ups and downs, no volatility because of competition. So get rid of the competition because that escalates conflict, right? You know what I mean?
according to their
Right.
theory.
You know, so they have that stabilized price, you know, and then they set up these larger markets that only certain people have access to. You know, I find that pretty amazing right there. That's right up in your face what that's all about. So that goes into the monopoly part of it. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Hmm.
So it's more than just socialism. It's monopolies that are set up because of socialist programs, like I was talking about. This goes back to Bismarck. You know what I'm saying? Where he turned around and he creates socialist welfare programs in order to freaking pull the citizens in Germany in and make them depend upon that empire and to be loyal to them. But at the same
But
time,
also, as far as incentives concerned, is to they would argue is to assist the population in having a quote unquote good life.
there we go. So I'm gonna keep that theme when I go over these notes. I'm gonna talk about how great these people are and how they're trying to help everybody.
Sorry, not a good life, sustainable life, I suppose.
There you go. We'll,
Mhm.
we'll use good words like sustainability, not profitability, but sustainability, things like that. But I mean that's the one thing that really stuck out to me. Like it goes back to Bismarck, you know. Um, and basically, in this way, the community like is it echoed the earlier traditions of Pill's policing too, as well as Bismarck and his welfare reforms, in my opinion. And that would be where governments like recognized social and economic pressures, basically. Um, they realized that it could destabilize the order and create it could create chaos. You know what I mean? So instead, they created these institutions supposedly that were supposed to address them before they became an issue or unmanageable. I guess you'd say. You know what I mean? That's their explanations for it. This goes back to that preventative logic. You know,
Yeah.
where they're gonna act on your behalf so that they can prevent you from long term misery and misfortune.
I was just thinking, does it go back just solely to Bismarck, or does it go back to the French Revolution, the entire liberty, fraternity, and equality concept?
Well, the thing about them though, like they first of all they were radicals that
Hmm.
and with them they well you know they weren't like a monarchical conservative freaking government that embraced welfare reform in order to prevent freaking socialists from coming in and destabilizing their economy. You know what I mean? It was like
Well, where reform is a sort of socialist concept in itself.
no, they just wanted to cut people's heads off. You know,
No, but no, the concept, the principles of the concept. I mean, fraternity is a general quality of feeling of fellowship between a group of people. Equality is being equal between a group of people.
well, equality doesn't really sit right for me. When I hear the word equality, that has socialism written all over it, dude.
Yeah, precisely. So yeah, rather than arguing on the
Or
various
equity.
markets, it's a evolutionary sort of on your Marxism, yeah. The entire Karl Marx concept. Again, I would argue it all comes out of the French Revolution.
Well, I mean, I shouldn't feel that way. You know what I mean? Because equality is a part of a classic liberal perception, but
Yeah.
but
You
it
can
just,
look at it from either way.
you know, I mean, but it does not sit right with me when it comes to that. Like today, people see the results of that, where equality is getting just really out of hand. Like not everybody should be equal. You know what I mean? People shouldn't have an equal pay. You know what I mean? It should be determined by the quality of work that person does. You know, it shouldn't be because of the position they hold. But there's people that would argue against that and say that I'm wrong. You know what I mean? So
Again, these people do not understand, do not appreciate the concepts of competition.
right, and of course we know what this coal and steel community felt about competition. You know, so they had to do that, use that preventative logic in order to make sure that competition didn't cause conflicts, because they're so afraid of World War II, all the way up into the 1950s, that they had to come up with these preventative ideas that would stop something from that ever happening again. What do you think? You think that's the case? Or do you think
Say that again. What did we digest that?
they they believe that that competition caused conflicts, and they came up with these preventative measures so that they could prevent that conflict. And the only way they did that was they got rid of competition. Okay.
Oh, this looks like. I'm sorry. Yeah. Just a tangent there. Just a tangent. Competition, anything can cause conflict. Competition itself is not. Just because you've got competition doesn't mean that you're gonna have conflict. I mean, as I demonstrated in my supermarket analogy earlier.
Okay,
Even though it
so
was a pretty poor analogy, granted, but it demonstrates demonstrates the point.
now for me, like I've said, you know, what they believed is like this community. It echoed the earlier traditions of Pill's policing and Bismarck's welfare reforms. Okay, and that's because these governments recognized that social and economic pressures could destabilize order and create and thus they created institutions to address them before they became unmanageable. So now they're using that preventative logic because they believe that they can prevent this this misfortune. You know what I mean? And they created these institutions whose sole job is preventative logic. Okay, they were so terrified that freaking all that stuff that happened in World War II was going to happen again, so they created these institutions. Okay, and their sole job was to freaking eliminate competition because competition caused conflict. Okay, and from that beginning, okay, integration started to deepen. That's where you get the word integration, and I'm pretty sure you've heard that term over there. Integration.
Of course, absolutely.
Yeah, you know. So the logic of prevention basically expanded beyond coal and steel into broader economic domains. Now, have you ever heard of the Treaty of Rome in the late 1950s?
Creating, which in effect created the European Economic Community.
That's what we're getting into now. The European Economic Community was designed to create a common market where goods, service, capital, and eventually people can move freely. Okay, that was the premise. That was what it was supposed to represent whenever they first started it up, where all of these goods, these services, and capital and people could move freely. And you can see where this is going, can't you?
I've got an issue with that. Well, obviously I've got issues with that. But just in the terminology there, how can you have a market without competition?
Well, I wasn't the one that thought of this clever idea. I'm asking the same question, to be honest with you. Without competition, how can you have a market? A free market, much less. You know? But the terminology, I do want to mention something though, and I have noticed this about Europe. They don't, or they do mention it every once in a while, but mostly when you hear them use their terminology, you always hear common market. Okay.
Again, you're talking about the European Union, you're not
right.
talking about Europe. Got to be careful there, because
well, I mean,
a number of countries in the European Economic Area that aren't in Europe. The UK, aren't in the European Union.
Well, in the European Union.
Example.
Well, I mean, you can hear people who aren't necessarily in the European Union make that phrase, though. My whole point is they call it the common market. And I've heard that being said, you know, on the media. Like if you pay attention to them, you'll notice they start calling it the common market, not the free market, but the common market.
I haven't heard that phrase in some time actually. Is it still quite common, quite a common, without a pun, phrase?
Well, I think free market is just something that people want to aspire to. I don't think there's ever truly been
is a common market still a atypical phrase?
Well, it does seem odd though. I mean, why would you want to start calling it a common market rather than a free market? It is kind of important, you know. The whole ideology behind, well, I ain't gonna say ideology after all that we've been talking about, but you know, with the whole concept behind free market is something that is really important, you know, where if I wanted to sell you something that wasn't illegal, you know, that you had a right to set your price and I had the right to set my price, you know, and we could negotiate. But these days people don't think that that's necessary. They have to have a middleman that can come in and negotiate for you. So if I want to sell
Oh,
you an apple,
yeah.
you know,
I mean, gone down a tangent a bit. This is one thing I realized about the standard the discourse around various objects market. The use of the term worth. I mean, how many times do you go to? How many times do you see an advert or go to a supermarket and somebody will say, "This cup is worth something," rather than it is valued at something.
okay, like,
It's the concept that going down the point of common. It's the concept that how do I yeah.
well, first of all, what's worth?
Precisely. What is worth? If this if that apple is worth, I don't know, $2 to you. If you think that apple is worth $2 to you, then that's a worth, isn't it? But
Mhm.
if somebody else is telling you that it's worth $2 to you, that's a valuation.
Yeah, right. And they've got tons and tons of books in the unemployment office that'll tell you how much your job is valued at. Isn't that amazing?
Uh,
They can tell you according to your skills how much your work is valued at. If you're a secretary in an office and you have all these skills as a secretary, they can evaluate how much that's worth in the workplace and tell you what you're worth.
Surely that's based on supply and demand.
Right. No, well, I mean,
Which
that's kind of tricky.
is in a stagnant, which is in a stagnant sort of point.
It's kind of tricky
Stagnant
there.
concept.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and that is a tricky slope. You know what I'm saying? It's like people talk about it in the media. With the news,
Hmm.
journalists who only care about the amount of money they make, and they don't have competition anymore because freaking they don't have anything of what I mean. They don't. They they're basically all getting paid the same. They're all basically being told that this is what you do and that's it, and they don't have any kind of imagination because they have no desire to have any kind of imagination. You know what I mean? It's just taken away from them. You're a reporter. This is what you earn. This is what you do. That's it. We're gonna.
Making the assumption that in the secretarial analogy, that one secretary is doing exactly the same job as another secretary.
That's the way the government wants to do it. That's the way the unemployment wants to do it. They wanna have these manuals that say this is how much your labor is worth. So this is the amount of pay you should ask for when you go in for a job. It's true. They've got
I understand there is a concept of again market demand. If I let's say somebody I use my own skill set as for instance somebody of my skill set in UK under current market connotations would if it's a full-time I say 38-hour per week network administration end user so-called third line, would be roughly from 32,000 per annum.
No,
Pound. So
no,
again, that's just based upon
common
sort of
market.
standard.
It all
Yeah.
comes back to that whole term, common market, okay? Because you got to understand the same three elements are still present. There's preventative logic, institutional authority, and incentives. Okay, that's what it all comes down to. Preventative logic for the European Economic Community. Okay, it aimed to reduce the risk of economic rivalry and trade wars, and they believe that that was one of the factors that previously destabilized Europe. Okay, that it was economic rivalries and trade wars that took place. You know, then you had a institutional authority, and that took shape in the creation of the European Commission and the Court of Justice. Okay. Now, these bodies were capable of enforcing rules across member states. So now you have preventative logic, you have institutional authority, and the incentives, they appeared in the promise of economic growth and rising prosperity through integration. So you needed to integrate, be a part of, to get these incentives. You see what I mean? And if you didn't integrate, you didn't get those incentives. You were deprived of it.
Is that an incentive then? It's with a chicken and egg sort of thing. Do you integrate to get incentive, or do you receive incentives to aid you to integrate?
Yeah, but you also have to take into consideration these were institutions that had taken control of the coal and steel industry first, and then created the European Commission, the Court of Justice, and then
Okay, I'm just talking about a much more sort of general concept.
but you know you know what I'm saying? Like they had pretty much absolute control of the whole situation. They did this through the European Economic Community.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like I mean, and that's what they've been pushing right there. You know.
Oh, they had full control in a lot of countries. I mean, the UK is a bit of a interesting, different sort of beast during Thatcherism. We were EEC members, but we still had we still had a lot of control ourselves.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what I've seen from all the stuff I've been going over is like as this community developed, it just revealed like the persistence of a pattern that was seen since like the 19th century. You know what I'm saying? Governments, like I said before, they understood that social pressures, whether in the form of working class unrest or nationalist competition, that they could threaten stability. Okay, and this brings you back to Pill again, which was Pill. Pill responded, you know, with his response, he produced a professionalized policing system. Then you had Bismarck, who introduced welfare, and then you go from there to post-war leaders. who embedded economies into supranationalist frameworks. You know what I'm saying? And it's all the same. It's all the same pattern that developed. You know, nothing that really ever changed from it. It was still the same stuff. You know what I mean? In each case, you know,
Okay.
the strategy was the same. You know, they anticipated conflict. They built into institutions that could regulate behavior, and then they offered tangible benefits that encourage compliance.
Yeah. Actually, benefits is a better word in this concept than incentives.
Yeah, tangible
Because I
benefit.
guess it goes back to my argument about what comes first. Yeah.
Now, the thing that you have to look at is the oil shocks in the economic crisis is back in the 1970s. Okay, now that tested the resilience of the European project. You know what I mean? Yeah, even there, you know, that whole preventative model, it still was able to basically make it through it. But that's a really good example of it. New policies were basically devised to stabilize currencies. They coordinated energy strategies. They managed social consequences of unemployment and inflation. You know, so people were actually seeing the consequences of not working. You know what I mean? I remember back in the 70s, um, when they were shutting down, they were telling people they needed to turn their power off to supply save on energy. You remember all that?
Oh, I would argue that you're a bit young to remember that time.
It was back
You're only a
during
couple of years older than me.
it was back during the I was young. I was about maybe 8 or 9
Yeah,
when
you.
I remembered it.
Okay. Okay.
About eight or nine, because I was born in 73 and that happened in what 78, 79, I believe. So it was about five
So
or
you're
six.
from, yeah, I would say.
5 or 6. I
Did
can
you
still
even have
remember.
any understand what was happening at the time?
I still remember my
Did
first
you have
grade
any
year.
sort of appreciation of what happened at the time?
Well, I remembered it was cold. You know, there was
Okay.
times there was times in the wintertime where schools had to be closed down because it was too cold for kids to go to school and stuff.
Okay.
I still remember that to this day. My first grade, I can still remember it like it was yesterday. Well, not yesterday, I'm sure. And I mean, I probably won't remember it correctly, knowing me. So
Uh, I don't know. In the UK, there's still closed schools if there's too much snow, but or something, which is very rare sort of thing anyway. But there's obvious reasons for that because if there's too much snow, how are people actually going to get into those schools?
so
Transportation links and stuff.
so we were talking earlier about stabilizing. All right, stabilization. Now, the European monetary system. Okay, it was introduced in the late 1970s, and that was another preventative measure. Okay, they um, they established the European monetary system um, to stabilize exchange rates. It sought to prevent competitive devaluation and monetary instability for undermining cooperation. Okay, so it
Mm.
sought to prevent competitive devaluation and monetary instability, and monetary instability from undermining cooperation. That doesn't even sound good, dude. Do you know what I mean? Listen to how that said. You want me to say it again?
Yeah, please.
It sought to prevent it sought to prevent competitive devaluations and monetary instability from undermining cooperation.
Okay. Just triggered my head about that one.
That's horrible, dude. Now, again,
Mm,
and
mm,
for me, again, uh, uh, institutional authority and incentives were combined with a logic of anticipation. You know what I'm saying? That's what it comes down to. Um, they were combined together with preventative logic. Basically, is what it basically comes down to. You know what I mean? They're going to prevent future occurrences from happening in their make believe minds. You know what I mean? Like the oil crisis that
mm.
happened in the 1970s, or late 1970s and the early 1980s. Nobody expected that to happen, and it was devastating. You know what I mean? It was a pretty bad time. You know, but they honestly believed, the European monetary system believed, that they could come up with these preventative measures that would prevent that from happening again in the future. Basically, um, it's their logic of anticipation.
Yeah.
So
Mm,
after that, I wanted to go ahead and kind of go over the fall of the Berlin Wall and the end of the Cold War, and how that
mm,
marked a decisive turning point. Um, German reunification in 1990 brought both opportunities and anxieties. For neighbors who feared a resurgent Germany, integration offered reassurance. So, by embedding Germany more deeply in European institutions, reunification could proceed without destabilizing the continent. Now, for Germany, membership in the European framework offered incentives of economic support and political legitimacy. Preventative governance thus played a central role in managing one of the most dramatic transformations of the century. I personally don't agree with that. I believe that, like I said in the last episode, I believe that Germany was actually the flagship. You know what I mean? That was their trophy that they were going to shine to the world. It was the manifestation of what the European economic community or monetary community, pres- uh, what they created. You know what I mean? Because this is all about the reconstruction of Europe, which involved
mm,
which involved the United States. It involved all these countries that literally took control of the coal and steel companies. They created the European Commission. You know what I mean? Economic community, and they just had absolute power. And all this time, they were freaking creating what the future Germany. You know what I mean? And then when the wall fell, I'm sure they had to have time to kind of get uh, what is it, East Germany to fall in line. But after that happened, man, you know what I mean. That was their start, their flagship. You know what I'm saying? That's how I see it. I see it as basically it was the creation of it all. I don't believe that they benefited because of how gracious these supranational institutions were. You know what I mean? I believe that Germany was the result of these supranational um, uh, entities. I guess.
Germany as a unified country, as a
Yeah.
singular unified country. Actually, I did hear an argument earlier today that suggested, that sort of argued that in the long run, Germany won World War II because of stabilisation.
Yeah.
After all, how long did Britain have to pay back to the US on all the supports that the US gave? Look at the sort of long-term sort of situation, or look at the situation that various countries are in at this present moment.
Yeah.
Even though Germany has been in recession for quite a while now, anyway.
Mhm. I just realized something.
Yeah.
I'm on the wrong channel watching the stream on YouTube, and it kind of blew me away. I didn't even realize that I was on the wrong channel. I went through there and I checked all the streams to make sure everything was all up and running still. So we have everything still going good. I was a little nervous, just so everybody
Just on
knows.
the
I had.
just on the point of the European coal and steel, just on the point of the European coal and steel community, I've got to remind myself about Charles de Gaulle's viewpoint on the president of France up to 1969.
Mhm.
I know he was not a fan of the ECSC at all.
Well, I mean, I think
But I've got to remind myself, yeah.
I think a lot of people, um, I think a lot of people were hoodwinked by it. You know what I mean? Um, but when you look at this, like I never really imagined myself diving this deep into Europe. You know what I mean? Europe, all of that conflict was confusing to me, just like it was with the Middle East. And for the longest time, I decided I didn't want to. I didn't want to trudge down that path. You know what I mean? But one day I was like, you know what? If this stuff is so confusing to you, do the research, find out, because then you'll have a better understanding of what took place. So I decided to do it,
Mm.
and all the time, dude, the only thing that kept ringing in my head was people were being hoodwinked. They honestly believed that these people were trying to do something that was good for them, and maybe they were, but I just don't see it in the records. You know what I'm saying? I don't see this kind of structure being for the betterment of Europe. I don't see it. I see it as an organized and orchestrated plan of socialism. So, and it's more than socialism, to be honest with you. Even this time, doing this year with you, I'm seeing that it's even more. This is like socialism that just kind of exploded into globalism, and it's become its own entity. You know what I mean? It's not even socialism. It's even got monopolies involved.
It is a form of socialism, but it's a sort of internationalized technocratic.
Dude,
Or,
they've got monopolies. You could easily
yeah,
you could
techno-
easily yeah And you could easily call this a fascist state just as much as you could a freaking socialist state. And you know how I feel about fascism. I mean, I think,
Again, you using the concept of socialism as in would be commonly considered as left wing now, go to Marxism, but fascism is a form of socialism.
yeah, I agree.
If you want to use the modern usage of the term fascism, again, you know my argument about the usage of words like fascism because it's very specific traditionally, it is still even the Nazi Party of Germany recognised the form of a sort of technocratic company sort of orientated control.
Yeah. Well,
That makes sense.
even Italy did it. If you remember Mussolini,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
Mussolini.
and well, yeah, that's a better sense of the term fascism. Again, you know, my dislike for the
Well, I mean, technocratic.
modern day
Even the
usage of word.
even the
Term.
technocracy, though. Well, you were talking about with the technocracy when Hungary, Austria wanted to go to Italy and give their loyalty to Italy over Germany because they didn't want to reunify, or they didn't want to be unified with Germany after or before World War II. Uh, Mussolini said that he would support them, but what they had to do was literally take the Italian Constitution, duplicate it, and sign. And the guy who was in charge had to sign it and basically make an identical constitution as what Italy had in order to that's a form of technocracy right there. You
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
um, and I found that pretty interesting whenever, because when you said that, that's what really stuck out to me right there was Mussolini. He was notorious for stuff like that.
Hmm.
He wanted all the governments to have an identical constitution that coincided with Italy. Not weird?
Arguably, yeah, arguably, isn't that what we see now?
Yeah.
Well, maybe not from a standpoint of Italy, but from a standpoint of countries such as Germany and uh, is Brussels, Luxembourg, Brussels.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay. So,
Oh, Belgium. Yeah.
oh,
So,
Belgium. Yeah. Yes. Big time, especially with
yeah.
Belgium.
Mm.
Now, like I was saying, for Germany, membership in the European framework offered incentives of economic support and political legitimacy. Preventative government or governance played a central role in managing one of the most dramatic transformations of the century. Um, Now, out of these dynamics emerged the Maastricht Treaty, and I probably mispronounced that, the Maastricht Treaty in the early 1990s, which formally established the European Union. Okay?
Oh, Maastricht.
Yeah, the
Maastricht.
Maastricht Treaty.
Yeah.
Okay, now here are the principles that had begun. Oh, go ahead.
No, carry on.
Okay.
I'm just remembering my time as a college student. This sort of, well, actually, good. I left school. I think I was 92. So yeah, I was just becoming a college students, and the entire sort of concept of European unity was really pushed down our throats at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Mm.
And see here, the principles that had begun with the monitoring of coal and steel reached their fullest expression. Okay, the European Union created a structure where sovereignty was pooled across multiple domains. And that's from trade to monetary policy to aspects of foreign and security policy. The logic of prevention was explicit. Integration was meant to prevent the return of nationalist rivalry, to prevent economic instability, and to prevent Europe from fragmenting in the face of globalization. So now they're saying that because of globalization, Europe was going to fragment. Okay, this is the logic they're trying to push on people. That globalization was going to cause Europe to fragment.
Okay.
This is what they were pushing whenever the European Union came to being. They had to do this because in the face of globalization, Europe was going to fragment into different factions and become what they were. That eventually created World War II. See, they got that World War II fear mentality still going on, is what I'm seeing. You know what I mean? And they're pushing that, especially considering.
Oh, so you mean globalization? So you're talking about globalization as in multiple super entities. So not just one entity, but multiple.
Well, no, I mean they in order for them to achieve the European Union, they had to say that globalization was going to cause Europe to fragment into different factions. So they had to unify and become.
If you all, if
It makes no sense. I know. I
but
do.
the point of the point of globalization is a form of unification, isn't it? Is it not?
Yes. Yes. They apparently were able to
So
do this kind of garbage.
yeah, it's contradictory.
Right. Now the logic of prevention, like I said, was very explicit. Okay, and that was integration was meant to prevent the return of nationalist rivalries. It was to prevent economic instability and to prevent Europe from fragmenting in the face of globalization. Makes no sense. Makes absolute and
Okay.
people just fell into they believe this stuff. How is Europe going to fragment in the face of globalization?
If it's a singular union, unless you're talking about multiple different entities, so let's say US, Asia, or BRICS, as we say now, EU, you can understand that it's not actually globalization, isn't it? Well, it's not globalization on a global scale, it's globalization upon
See,
individual entity. Yeah.
no, that goes into
Kind
that goes into something that you bring up an interesting thing there, because I wanted to mention this before. We were talking about globalization at one point, and then I remembered later on. We also have to remember that there's different forms of globalization too, because you've got globalization like the UN, But then you have multinational corporations. You've got the stock exchange, which is a beast all on its own. So you've got different forms of globalization as well. You know what I mean? So I'm wondering.
Yeah.
I'm wondering exactly what kind of globalization they were referring to. Was it like a multinational corporations coming in and taking control, or maybe something like
A
that?
multinational entity. So European Union in relation to its member states, BRICS members in relation to its member states. Um,
Well, I don't want to say too many things that are nice about the European Union, so we'll just leave it at that. You know what I mean? I'm getting
well, I'm not being. I can't see how you
I'm kind of
can
I'm
nice.
kind of puking in my mouth at the moment just by saying what I said. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, oh God,
Yeah.
that's how much I hate talking nice about the EU. It's
Are you
just
being nice? Uh,
well,
I think we are being so neutral.
I was kind of trying to be nice, but it's not working out too well. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Now, institutional authority was further entrenched in bodies such as the European Parliament and the European Central Bank. Incentives included access to a vast single market, structural funds for less developed regions, and the promise of collective influence in global affairs. Um,
What's that point that you made about funds? Less developed region. Should we talk about Greece? Should we talk about Italy at this present moment?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Greece especially. Greece, they have been treated so
Yeah.
badly,
Yeah.
so badly. Like
Mm.
the first time I heard about Greece was when I found out like they owe all these other countries so many reparations that they will never be able to pay them back. So they are basically a freaking an entire country that is a slave to the rest of the Europeans because of reparations.
Oh, rest of the EU.
Yeah.
Rather than, again.
Well, I keep forgetting about.
Yeah.
I, I keep saying Europe when I should be saying European Union. But you know what I mean. That was the first. That was the first time I remember hearing about it, and it's like it's just horrible. Like, have they ever been able to pull out of that?
I've not been following Greece since situation for a while, but technically they are still is bankrupt the correct term in this case.
Mission accomplished. They got that socialist part taken care of. Corrupt. You know, I mean, make it to where the economy collapses and they can start it from the ground up. You know, rebuild it under a socialist program. You know, and then all they have to do is wait for the other countries to collapse, and they can do the same thing. So now, for me,
Which you're seeing at this present moment anyway. Oh, and again, you could argue that we are seeing that on a sort of globalist scale anyway. I mean, the US isn't financially buoyant by any stretch of imagination. Japan, what, 40 years worth of quantitative easing now?
well, I mean, you can.
So it's not just European.
the continuity is just it's really striking though. You know what I'm saying? Because like when you we'll look at Greece, okay, you look at that and you compare it to, like I said, with Pill's police reforms that were created to prevent crime. Then you look at Bismarck's welfare state, and that offered incentives to prevent socialist upheavals. You know what I mean? So you turn around and you take a country like Greece, whose economy has fallen and they've gone into bankruptcy, like you said. Um, that's when the EU could slide in there and start giving them incentives. As long as they cooperate. Now, if they cooperate, then everything's all right. But if they don't cooperate and they don't do what they're told, then those incentives
Again,
benefits.
Yeah, benefits. Yeah,
Those
Yeah.
benefits.
yeah.
So after that, when you take a look at it, you also look at Kalergi's pan-European vision, okay, which argued for supranational structures to prevent war. Okay. Now, the coal and steel community institutionalized this logic at the continental scale. And the European Union later extended it across nearly every aspect of political and economic life. Now, in each case, the state of the state or supranational body recognized that social or political pressures had the potential to undermine order. And so it sought to build frameworks that could continue or contain and channel those pressures. So now we come to the debates about integration. Now we'll start talking about that, because integration was actually a big deal, and it still is a big deal when it comes to the European Union, and that's an issue that's going on in England that Mr. Edworthy likes to bark and moan about and get all angry and upset.
I like to. I'm not sure like is the sort
It's not really a
of
good taste in your throat whenever you have to say it. You know what I mean? But now the debates about integration, they've basically been central when it comes to the history of the European project since its very beginning. Okay, and they continue to even shape the European Union today. Now, these debates revolve around how far integration should go and what powers should rest with supranational institutions, and how much sovereignty member states are willing to surrender for the sake of collective stability. Now, they mirror the same tensions that we've discussed before, where governments balance preventative measures, institutional authority, and incentives for compliance, but at the level of national or nations rather than individuals. One of the earliest debates concerned economic versus political integration. Some leaders, inspired by the coal and steel community, believed that integration should remain pragmatic and limited to shared industries or markets. Now, this was sometimes described as functionalism, and that's the idea that cooperation in specific sectors would create a web of interdependence that gradually built trust. Now, others, following Kalergi's earlier vision, argued for immediate political federation. They believed that piecemeal integration left too much room for old national rivalries to return. Now, the Treaty of Rome represented a compromise, economic integration first, with the hope that political unity might follow. Um,
Hence the what was the quote I read last week? The name, I can't remember the
Clerk.
no, not Clark, the other bloke, the French.
Oh God, you were just talking about him. You literally were just talking about him. Yeah. Now the you want me to continue?
Jean Monnet. Jean Monnet.
Okay, Jean Monnet. That was it. I literally forgot him. You had just mentioned him a little while ago too.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mentioned him just to remind you of the quote, which is completely related to what you're saying now. He made this quote in 1956, and it is Europe's nations should be guided towards a superstate without the people understanding what is happening. This can be accomplished by successive steps, each disguised as having an economic purpose, but which will irreversibly lead to federation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's what it is. They wanted a federal government, a federation, and that's something that I
all disguised as sort of an economic sort of union. At least at the start, disguised as an economic union.
Now, the Treaty of Rome, it represented a compromise, economic integration first, with the hope of political unity, or that political unity might follow. Now, another key debate has been over the balance between larger and smaller states. Okay, now the European institutions were designed to prevent domination by any single power, especially Germany or France. Yet larger states inevitably wielded more influence, particularly in the Council of Ministers and later in the European Council. Smaller states pushed for stronger supranational bodies like the Commission and the Parliament, which could act as counterweights. This tension reflected the same logic as earlier systems of governance. This goes back again to Bismarck, who used welfare, and that was to contain socialist pressures. And the architects of Europe used institutional checks to contain fears of domination. Okay, so you have the same thing going on there. Okay, it's just a different time period, different form of government, but they're using the same patterns, the same strategies, same techniques. Okay, and this is all supposed to be preventative logic to prevent World War, because they're so afraid of World War II happening again. They're going to do all this stuff to prevent it. But in reality, they're just doing the same shit, different day. At least that's my take on it. You know what I mean? I know that's not a very intelligent way of saying it, but that's the way I see it.
Yeah.
That's actually an old saying in my neck of the woods.
Indeed.
Yeah. But it reflects the same logic as earlier systems of governance from back in the 1900s. Nothing changed. You know what I mean? Now, monetary integration it sparked particularly heated debates. That was the creation of the single currency through the Maastricht Treaty, which required states to give up control of their national monetary policies. And that was one of the most powerful tools of sovereignty. You know, supporters argue.
One thing that one thing that's a country or union, the UK, managed to ignore.
Yeah.
After all, we still got a pound sterling. We still got sterling. We've never been. We've never had. The euro has never been the currency, or at least not yet, has been the currency of this country.
You guys still
Britain.
recognize it, though, right? You guys still recognize the.
Well, yeah, much like the same that we recognize the US dollar or whatever dollar or
that's because
the yen.
You guys know better than not recognize the US dollar. That's like worth 5-6 more times more than your pound. I mean, it's like what? The pound's like worth 50 cents, maybe 25 cents here in the US.
What's the? Oh, let me just work on that.
It's a little bit below it. I don't know. It's maybe 75 cents.
At the moment, $1 equates to 74 pounds sterling, 0.74 pounds sterling, so 74 pence.
So that would be like cents to us here in the United States. You say pence, we say cents.
So yeah, $1 equates to $1 equates to 74 pence.
Yeah, 74, 75. I knew it was around there somewhere. Now the yen, I think, is higher than both the U.S. and the English dollar. So I'm not quite sure, but I think it is.
$1 equates to 147.30 yen.
Wow, so it's worth more than a yen?
No, the yen is worth more than $1.
Okay.
147.30 yen to $1.
Well, I mean, that's actually the opposite. Like 147 yen. That means like freaking I can go over there with $1 and live like a king, dude.
Yeah.
It all depends on how much cheeseburger costs.
But yeah, again, this see where I got confused. You made the same error talking about the pound sterling. Pound sterling is worth more than the United States dollar at the moment.
Well, 75 pence for $1. Yeah, that would mean that freaking you would get ripped off if I traded you a pound for $1 then, because it's the other way around. You're right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't ask me about maths at 2:30 in the morning.
So the creation of the single currency, when it comes to that, supporters argued that common currency would prevent competition, devaluations, and speculative attacks, specializing Europe's economy. Critics feared that without political union, monetary union would create rigidities and expose weaker economies to crises they could not manage. Now, this debate was vindicated decades later during the Eurozone crisis, when tensions between northern and southern members revealed the strain or the strains of shared currency without full fiscal union. Now, that would be right around the time where I was talking about with Greece, I believe. That's when all that really started breaking out, wasn't it? Um, it's my memory,
I
isn't
think
it?
so. I would have to. Yeah, again, without giving me actual date, years, dates.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
Now, as the Union expanded to include countries from Southern and later Eastern Europe, older. Um, wait, hold up. No, actually, the best thing for me to do is I need to start out from the beginning because I almost skipped some of it. Now, migration and enlargement have also been very divisive. This is the part that is the big issue today, and this is where a lot of people really don't know the history when it comes to this whole migration issue and where it actually started. And I've had a lot of conversations with you about this too when it comes to migration in Europe. Um, Now, whenever you talk about migration, you have to know the history, and where it is as the Union expanded to include countries from Southern and later in Eastern Europe, older members worried about labor competition, also wage pressure, and cultural differences. Supporters of enlargement, which that's what it really is. It's referred to as enlargement. Supporters of enlargement, they argued that bringing in new members would prevent instability at Europe's periphery and consolidate democracy. Uh, this again
It,
echoes the
sorry, just the point we were talking about 2,400.
yeah, roughly.
Yeah, the inclusion of Cyprus, Estonia, Czechia, Hungary, and Poland, and a couple of other countries.
Hmm. Now, see, um, a lot of this it echoes the preventative logic once again, basically. Okay, enlargement was less about immediate economic gain and more about stabilizing regions that could otherwise become sources of conflict.
Right.
You know what I mean? Instead of
Yeah, sorry, I just found out 2004, an additional 10 countries
it could
into
actually
the EU.
we we're actually coming up on another area that's important when it comes to enlargement, because there was actually two things that happened when it comes to immigration that really needs to be recognized. Now, um, enlargement happened the first time, and the reason why they did it is because it was supposed to be, again, you know, um, it was supposed to be again another form of preventative uh, measures. Okay, preventative logic is what I'll call it. It wasn't really about like economic gain or anything of that nature. It was about like stabilizing regions, because they were afraid
Mm.
that it would uh, become a source of conflict, and that's the one thing that they didn't want to do. So rather than having an issue, they wanted to incorporate it into the EU. Okay, um, but the cultural and economic strains of enlargement that's what have kept the debates alive. The most visible debate in recent times was with you guys.
I just added a reference to the chat here with a map of showing the enlargement of 2004.
Let me see if I can pull that.
Got
I could probably put that up like I did before on the screen.
The 2004 integrated over 74 million citizens into the EU.
Yeah.
So increase the number by another 74.
Oh shit! Hold on. Give me a second. You got to remember, I was telling you I have issues with my computer. That's the reason why we're running late. So people know we're running late because just before I started the stream, everything froze up. I turned the computer off, and all of a sudden, I'm having to restart it and go through a whole bunch of stuff.
I've got a better data source for you, but
hold on a minute now. This actually caused my computer to do some weird stuff. Like I actually had to sit still before I could do this, and then the wheel's still turning on the loading thing, So we've got to treat this computer with kid gloves today because it wants to be mean to me, and I'm kind of nervous. 2004 facts and figures.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you might want to look that bit later rather than no. One document.
Let me go ahead. I wish they would allow me to do they did it. So let me go ahead and pop this up.
Oh, it doesn't matter if you can bring it up after all.
I'm gonna screen.
I've already mentioned.
I'm gonna screen that for you, and that way we can let everybody see what we're looking at. And European Union map on Wikipedia. If I'm not careful, this is going to explode. You remember those old conversations, don't you? Where I used to bait you guys in the whole thing about computers exploding and shit. You and Dan would have such a fit, like it never happens. Okay, so there we go.
I did demonstrate old 8-bit machines exploding. Oops. Transformers exploding. But yeah.
Let me see if I can. Is that widescreen? Can you see that?
Yeah, it's not a great image. I was just looking at the image on that other article I gave you, which is clear. But it's
I can pull it up. It's just a matter of grabbing the right one, and that's the one down on the bottom right. The last post.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can just switch that over because it's not really all that great of a map. At least people have a better look at it. You know what I mean? But that is basically the 2004 enlargement of the European.
And if you just scroll down, there's a better image, just demonstrating what you were just showing.
I don't know.
There should be a better image. No, you scrolled way past that. Maybe you have no problem there.
It should be right here. Or wait, maybe it.
Yeah. Just under the heading over to 24 million subheading the EU in 2004. Yeah, just below that last paragraph. In between that last paragraph, there is a text version.
Yeah, they're not showing it.
But yeah, it's not rendering for some reason.
That's crazy. Well, it's still loading, so maybe here in a minute we can have it up and it'll pop in there. So once it's done loading, the little wheels turning, then we'll see it. So we got to be patient. Now,
Tell that road me for. Can say.
supporters of enlargement, like I said, argued that bringing in new members would prevent instability at Europe's periphery and consolidate democracy. And like I said, this echoes the preventative logic once again. Enlargement was less about immediate economic gain and more about stabilizing regions that could otherwise become sources of conflict. Okay, and there we go. That's what you were wanting. Is that it?
No, the image above.
The image.
There should be a there should be an image map just above it.
There we go. Much.
Yeah, that one. And it's an image map because you can just head your mouse over and it should come up with a few data points.
Yeah, you got Finland here. Accession in 1990.
I think, yeah. All the dark blue represents the enlarged post 2004.
Yeah, you got Cyprus here.
Enlargement. Yeah.
You got Cyprus here. You got Hungary. Slovenia. Then Slovakia. Then Czechia. And Poland. And then Lithuania. As well as Latvia and Estonia. And there we go. Now, see, Estonia is the one that I find really odd that they're in the EU, considering that they're such staunch supporters of Russia. You know, I really do find that really odd that they're part of the EU. I still find that odd.
Definitely. And there should be 10 countries.
Well,
I can only count 9 there.
1, 2, 1, 2.
2.
Right here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
3,
6,
4,
7, 8. You're right. And that's 9 right there.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah. Okay. It's missing a country somewhere.
What did they do with that country? Now, this goes to with the cultural and the economic strange of enlargement. Now that's what's kept the debate alive. Okay, and the most visible debate in recent times was the British exit from the Union. That would be Brexit, which is going on in your country right now. Now they love to call you guys Eurosceptics. You guys are just a bunch of Eurosceptic voices in Britain, and you long argued that integration undermined national sovereignty and that it subjected the country to regulations it had not chosen and eroded democratic accountability. Do you agree with that? I want to hear it from an English.
Yeah. Well, I've made this argument to you. I've made this argument to you on plenty of occasions.
Well, I mean, I had to hear it. I had to openly hear it from a Brit. I had to hear it. Now, do you consider yourself a Eurosceptic? Huh?
A define Eurosceptics.
I just did. Do
I
you argue that the integration undermined national sovereignty?
well, yeah. Made, as I've mentioned, argued on multiple occasions now. Yeah.
And do you think that your country was subjected to regulations it didn't choose? Huh?
Yeah.
What about democratic accountability? You think it eroded democratic accountability?
Obviously, if we can't choose something, therefore, how can you call something democratic if you haven't got the opportunity to choose that? Then
I heard you couldn't even vote for your own representative to the EU Parliament. Is that true?
you can, or well, you could. No, you could vote for your own localized representatives, but it doesn't really matter anyway, because the European Union is not really a democratic body in itself. It's controlled and dictated to by the European Commission, which is a small non-elected group.
Well, supporters of members they counter that leaving the union would undermine economic stability and it would weaken Britain's influence. They went on further to say that it would expose it to precisely the kind of instability that integration was designed to prevent.
Again, isn't that a sort of false argument? Again, I point back to Greece, I point back to Italy. They're European Union members. Yeah, economically at the moment.
Well, I mean,
Italy.
I'm saying I don't. They're saying that it would expose you guys to precisely the kind of instability. Now we go back.
That we have seen happening within the European Union at this present moment.
Let's go back to just what we were talking about too. What did they consider instability? You know, that would be competition.
Actually, that's a good question.
That would be competition. Yeah. It would expose you to competition, dude. You see, integration.
And is that a bad thing?
That's kind of what I'm getting at. You know what I mean? That it's not a bad thing. Like it would expose you to competition. Precisely the kind of instability that integration was designed to prevent. So poor old England is being exposed to competition.
Okay, there's an assumption there, isn't there? There's an assumption to say that competition is a bad thing. Instability is always a bad thing.
You know, no, they're saying competition is instability. That by itself is a bad thing.
Yeah.
That's horrible. The fact that they would think that, you know what I mean? But they honestly believe that. Now, even Brexit, I'm sorry, I said breakfast, but Brexit, in my opinion, it's not simply like a national event. You know what I mean? It's actually part of a bigger debate, and that has to do with
Mm.
how much sovereignty uh, should be traded for like preventative order, and I guess at a continental level too, because that's the entire freaking European continent that we're talking about. You know, I mean, how much of your sovereignty do you trade off in order to get this?
Actually, European continent again, you're conflating Europe with European Union.
No, I
Not
mean,
really the European continent as a whole.
in this respect, all of Europe is in danger, dude. So I mean, it does it does. I mean, all of Europe is actually at stake for this kind of supranational uh, corporation, I guess you could call it, institution. You know what I mean? It's a threat to all of Europe, and you can include England in that if you like, I guess.
Of the European Economic Area.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. What
They,
happens?
yeah,
What happens if they take over the entire continent of Europe?
East Switzerland, I remember the EEA.
You know. Now,
Mm,
now we get
got
to
me thinking.
now we get to the bigger topic of migration flows. Uh, and first, in order to really get a hold of that really properly, we've got to talk about post-war Europe. Migration flows in post-war Europe began as labor issues, basically. Okay. Um, Now,
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I am. I was correct technically. Switzerland, the UK, uh, obviously Russia, Belarus, Monaco, um, and a few other countries are not EEA members.
okay. So,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
so now we get into the migration flows. Okay. Now this is the topic that a lot of people over in Europe, especially in England, they love to talk about migrations here lately. So now we're getting into the bread and butter part that we were talking about. Okay. You there?
Yeah, yeah.
Deep, deep in thought, aren't you?
Yeah, no, I was just considering EFTA and EEA and flips. Carry on.
Okay, so with migration flows, you have to look at post-war Europe. Okay, and migration flows in post-war Europe began basically as a labor issue. Now, Western European economies were devastated after the Second World War, and Reconstruction required massive workforces. At first, migrations were internal from rural or urban regions, or from southern or northern Europe. Okay, that would be Italy, Spain, and Portugal, who supplied workers to the factories of France and Germany. Now later, uh, uh, labor sabotages led to to recruitment, or actually shortages, I should say. Later, labor shortages led to recruitment from outside Europe, most notably from Turkey, North Africa, and South Asia. Governments believed that these flows were temporary, referring to workers as guest laborers. Yet over time, many migrants settled permanently. Now, this created new multicultural realities, and these weren't anticipated in the original design when it comes to integration. This was basically the chink in their chain. You know what I'm saying? Like they had all of this preventative logic that was going to prevent this and that, and there was going to be no threat of world war ever occurring again. But they didn't estimate, or they didn't take into consideration the migration and the labor forces that they had to import in from other countries or from smaller rural areas to the north and south of in Europe. You know what I mean? That never crossed their mind, and it became an issue eventually. This, and like I said, it created multicultural realities. Um, and these migration flows, they carried with them both opportunities as well as tensions. On one hand, they provided the labor necessary for economic recovery and fueled the growth of industries that stabilized Europe in the post-war decades. Now, on the other hand, they triggered social anxieties, particularly when economic downturns hit in the 1970s. So, migrant workers and their families were often blamed for unemployment, strained welfare systems, or cultural change. Governments responded in ways that reflected the old preventative logic again. Policies were designed to manage inflows, to regulate the status of migrants, and to offer incentives for assimilation or return. Uh, yeah, because of because these issues touch questions of identity as much as economics, uh, they proved harder to contain. The balance of power between states in Europe intersected with migration. Countries that were net receivers of migrants, like Germany and France, often bore more of the social cost, while other states contributed migrants, but didn't experience the same internal strains. Um, this imbalance influenced debates about burden sharing within the European Union. Now, just like in the 19th century with Bismarck's welfare policies, where they were designed to like spread risk across society, the Union has also attempted to spread the risk of migration across member states. So they had a buildup of these migrants, and their solution was to spread them out. You know what I mean? Um, Now, the creation of the Schengen zone with free movement of people that intensified these pressures by eliminating internal borders. Have you ever heard of the Schengen zone, Mark?
Sengen. Yeah, well, yeah, obviously, yeah, one of the basic concepts of the European Union, being able to move freely within the Union, without needing to demonstrate papers or passports or anything.
Eliminating internal borders.
So, yeah, you could be living in Germany and then commute to work to Austria every single day.
Now, crises. Yeah, crises like the refugee influx during the wars in the Balkans in the 1990s, and later during the Syrian conflict uh, showed how migration flows could quickly destabilize both national politics and the Union itself. Um, at the same time, the balance of power among states shaped how integration unfolded. Larger states such as France and Germany often set the agenda. Germany in particular, because its economic strength and central position became the gravitational center of the Union. This is where I was getting to the point where Germany basically was its flagship. Okay, I don't believe that it was actually, like whenever Germany reunified, they were so gracious that they accepted it into the fold. I believe that it was its flagship. It was meant to be um, the center of the European Union. You know what I mean? I just that's the way I really feel about that. So it just the center.
At least one of the controlling states of the European Union.
Well, I mean,
I would say the centre of it.
name
Yeah,
any
one
name,
of the controlling states.
being honest, name any other state that's actually got more power than Germany.
As much power does. I wouldn't say more power, but as much power. France,
God, please.
Brussels or Belgium.
I've already demoted France. Okay, we can't say that. Like Canada has
Why
more.
not?
Canada has more respect to me than what France does. 15
That's not. That's not relevant. What countries you respect or not, it's not
15,
relevant.
15 constitutions, dude. Seriously.
Yeah, but still, can that was again. That's not relevant to the present or
Yes.
post 1970 or post 70
Yes.
74.
15 constitutions is ridiculous, dude.
Again, still not relevant to its sort of ECEU membership or membership. Yeah,
Well, I mean, people should have like made them actually work to join the EU. If anything, like you can't have any kind of
they're founding.
institution. Whatever, dude. You can't have any kind of institution or government involved that's not able to make their minds up and stick to it. You know what I mean? Like changing freaking your constitution at a whim. Seriously, that just shows. That just shows
Uh,
how unstable you are.
Hardly a win.
Oh, it's hardly a whim. Well, I could say that if it was three, maybe four times. They've three tops. I could say that. But 15 is just kind of taking it a little too far. You know what I mean? That's just ridiculous.
Yeah. If you want to base it upon the original 1951 concept, you're talking about 6 countries, so all have at least theoretically the same power, even though it's arguably if they have the Netherlands, Luxembourg, Italy, France, Germany, and Belgium.
Okay. Well, Belgian, I can understand. Belgian was always
Yeah.
central.
So I would argue the current situation, Belgium, Germany, and France are the biggest players in the EU. And again, you can't really call individual countries big players because, again, the EU is controlled by the European Commission, which is purposely controlled.
Well, I mean,
It's controlled by a load of bureaucrats. So, again, unelected bureaucrats. So, yeah.
you're gonna have to make up your mind, dude. You're gonna have to either say you like the EU or you don't like the EU. I'm getting mixed vibes from you.
I've never said I like the EU.
Well, I'm
I
just
mean,
saying,
I don't know where you're getting that from.
you're like getting all happy feet and shit when it comes to the EU.
Only, I'm just explaining this situation of
I know. It's just like I said. I'm like, there's
and
certain times.
yeah, just explaining the situation doesn't mean that you approve of the situation.
Yeah, I know. It's just, sometimes I said it earlier. Sometimes when I talk nice about the EU, I get like this feeling where I want to puke in my mouth. You know what I mean? And
You
I,
know,
I don't, I don't detect that when you start talking nice about them. Like you just start all talking admirable and shit and saying beautiful things.
I'm hardly talking admirable. I'm just explaining
Okay, I wanted to
the
validate
context.
that. I just wanted to validate that so that
Yeah.
we know now. When it comes to where we were at before and we were getting into this nonsense that I started to, by the way, I'm sorry, but I just had to rouse you a little bit. Now,
I mean, it is a simple example. I hate American chocolate. I hate Hershey's. But I can talk about Hershey's. I can talk about the history of Hershey's. Doesn't mean I like Hershey's. That's an
okay,
example.
okay. No, I mean I agree with you when it comes to a lot of things, but like with Germany, okay, I still stand by that about Germany being like the flagship, and I believe that it was actually created for the pure purpose of being well, it would be basically what Washington D.C. is to the United States, in my opinion. That's what Germany was meant to be from the beginning. You know what I mean? In my opinion, it seemed like it fit like a
I'm
hand
not
in glove.
sure if I.
You know?
Surely, in that case, I would argue that Belgium, Brussels,
Well, Belgium especially.
Brussels has always been trade. Brussels has always been traditionally the centre, or at least of the EEC.
Well, they've always been Germany's puppet, dude.
Arabia,
Belgium's right there, dude. It's like Brussels, and you know what I mean? Like Belgium, right there. It's right next to it. It's actually closer to
what's
Germany than it is to
the
France.
yeah, but EU headquarters are what is the building called? Is used.
Now, smaller states worried that decisions about migration, enlargement, or economic governance reflected the interests of the largest powers more than a collective will. Migration flows also played directly into this balance. Germany's decision in 2015 to open its doors to large numbers of refugees during the Syrian crisis, for example, was framed by Berlin as a humanitarian gesture, but also as a preventative strategy to stabilize Europe's borders. However, this decision created political backlash in other member states who saw it as an imposition on their sovereignty. Uh, The controversy exposed the limits of solidarity and the fragility of consensus when it came to sharing the cost of migration. What do you think about that? Huh? You froze up, didn't you?
Carry on. I got my own views, but yeah, carry on.
Oh,
I've got my own views, but I'll let you carry on for a moment.
well, what's your views on that? I know you got something to say. Oh, you want me to go further so I can bring up some more stuff? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so these debates echo earlier European history. Again, we go back to ethnic and nationalist tensions that had destabilized the continent in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. And the European Union was designed in part to prevent such divisions from erupting again. That's one thing that I was saying earlier, where it was a chink in the chain. You know what I mean? This is something that they did not estimate. They did not realize that they were creating their own demise by using foreign migration in order to build up their labor forces within the European Union, and it came back to bite them.
Mm-hmm.
So, um,
As we're seeing at this moment, yeah.
it's all now that the migration flows by altering demographics and raising questions of identity reawaken many of these old anxieties. Which that's something that we can see now. Like you hear a lot of people talking about like the state of Europe and where it's going to go. I've heard people talking that there could be possibly another world war because of the issues that are taking place. It's getting pretty serious, to be honest with you. You can see it. It's not something.
Well. If there is a world war, then this one factor isn't the only factor.
Well,
There will
elaborate.
be multiple reasons.
I think integration as a whole, which includes migration, is something
Yeah.
that's going to be
Um,
like that.
People talk about multiculturalism, and you probably will disagree with me on this point, but multiculturalism, I believe, has been an extreme, or multiculturalism, as created by people like Tony Blair, has been a disaster, because it erodes the concept of integration. I've got no issue with multi-racialism, but multiculturalism is, as we are seeing at this moment, is dangerous.
Well, look at the topics that we've been talking about too, like ethno nationalism. What do you think that's about? That's exactly what you're talking about right there. These people had.
Yeah, I'm not talking about when people look at that, they look at it on a racial point. Again, I'm not looking at it on a racial point. I'm looking at it on a cultural.
We've had that
point.
conversation like 2 times already. And it's like when ethno nationalism actually started up, people weren't looking at the ethnic groups when it just comes to race. You know what I mean? That didn't start until the time when Darwinism came along, and that's when people started connecting ethnic groups with race. So, like before, they were talking about.
I think that point is important to repeat. The difference between racialism and culturalism.
Well,
A
even
lot of people,
ethnic groups too. Ethnic groups too. Like white people could be 4 or 5 different ethnic groups. Black people could have 4 or 5 different ethnic groups. You know what I'm saying? It's like there. You had the Slavs. You had the Serbs. You had freaking Serbians, the Serbs. You had the freaking Poles. You had the Germans. You had the French. These were all ethnic groups back then. You know what I mean? They or the Franks. They didn't call them the French. They called them the Franks. So you had different ethnic groups, and that didn't get turned into race or what they. I don't even like using the term race because that's the improper term for it. You know what I mean? We're all part of the human race. So that kind of sets me in the wrong direction there. But ethnic are they didn't according to your the color of your skin or you know what I mean like that. They didn't go according to that until Darwinism came along and eugenics. So I mean that's something that I point out. That's what I think is very important for people to understand too. You know what I mean? This is the same stuff as what you're talking about when it comes to conflict. And Europe is notorious for it. How many conflicts have started in Europe? You know, it's a breeding ground for.
Europe is a very you remember Europe's a very old continent.
It's a breeding ground for.
Compared to we've got European countries have a long history predating the US by
Don't just
hundreds, thousands of years.
don't just clump the United States in there, okay? I mean, it's like freaking. You got China too. You got freaking India. You got you got freaking.
China is a
I think the only
ancient civilization.
the only continent or the only continent I guess you could say that is more dangerous than freaking Europe is the Middle East. And that's Asia.
At this present moment, depends on how you're measuring it.
Historically as well as modern. Historically, like there has been a lot of stuff take place in Europe. You know what I mean? A lot. I mean,
About Asia, about Japanese, conflicts.
I got 2 words for you, and that's called Eastern Europe. Okay, you will never find the amount of violence that was involved in Eastern Europe from the beginning of recorded history until now, dude. Insane.
Like I was going to say, look what happened. Look at what the Japanese did during the 19th and early part of the 20th century to a lot of other Asian countries. China, as an example.
Are you aware that like you can't even really like okay for a good example Romania, okay, Romania. You can't even go back to like the year 500 or 600 and actually get an accurate historical document from that time period because there's been so much war and so much destruction in that region that a lot of their historical documentation is gone. Okay, it's all just.
But you say that way anything.
Mostly,
no matter where in the world.
Mostly there though, like a lot of the people that they state are historical. There's no real proof that they existed. You know, Like there's just word of mouth and legends and things of that nature, but there's no historical accuracy there saying that this person or that person actually existed. You know, and that's because information has been destroyed in that region from constant warfare. You had the Ottomans fighting the Hungarians, the Austrians, uh, Austro-Hungarians. That was a battleground between those two freaking empires. And then you had Russia, which was the Orthodox.
Yeah, but the Ottomans, what we are talking about, as far as the Ottomans are concerned, we are talking about what, 600 years,
Mhm. Well, I mean, it was
500 years, 600 years, which is really just so. It's not that long in the long term.
right. And that, yeah, that's one thing that we were talking about before when it comes to that, because a lot of people think the Ottoman Empire
I
was an
mean,
old empire, and it really wasn't. It really wasn't.
you've got to look at this in perspective. I mean, yeah, like I keep on mentioning to you, and we have plenty of conversations about. The US, North America, what, 2, 3, 400 years old now. England,
Mhm. Well, I got
1,000. Yeah, let's say from the Norman Congress. So yeah, 1,000 years.
I can wrap up these talking points and add on to that in just one single thing. Okay. Um, Now, when it comes to preventative strategies of integration, okay, which are basically shared rules,
Um,
okay,
mm,
supranational authority and incentives for cooperation. Now, incentives for cooperations, I find that actually the most disturbing part, and I've mentioned that to you before. As long as you cooperate, you get these incentives or these benefits. Now,
yeah.
they were meant to uh, manage freaking the EU, okay? But the uneven distribution of migration or migrants and persistence of national identity, uh, that meant that the balance of power continued to shape the outcome of what was basically going to end up being what it is now. Um, you have that that struggle going on now. So you have like this. They're literally trying to distribute human beings in different areas of freaking Europe. Like it's actually just a production line. You know what I mean? You need to go here. You need to go here, and they're just spreading them out.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Um, and that's the big uh, that's the big struggle. You know, and all that is a balance of power, and that's all it is. You know, it has nothing to do with anybody else's freaking ideologies, their national beliefs, any of that. You know what I mean? This has to do with what it comes down to what we were talking about before. That cold, methodical machine that doesn't care about your ideologies. They don't care about your beliefs. They don't care about
Well, it
nothing.
has got something to do with national ideologies because it's the destruction, the erosion of said national
It's
concepts.
from
The
from
concept of you are a person of the world rather than you are a person of this nation.
do you really even feel that though when it comes to the EU, or do you feel like this is a cold, heartless machine that's just processing and manufacturing?
It can be both, can it not?
I haven't seen it.
The destruction of national of sovereignty, the destruction of national concepts being caused due to the sort of mechanical workings.
I don't know. I don't buy it. I mean, I really don't buy it. I think the EU is the biggest threat that this world, England included, has at its doorstep. Everybody keeps talking about China. Everybody keeps talking about
Yeah.
communism.
I think actually we are. I think we actually are agreeing, but I'm not sure if you can see it because I'm
I agree.
sort of reiterating what you just said.
Right. And I believe the EU is the biggest threat we have in the future, and I think I know that's what me and you. That's one thing I know me and you agree on the most. The only thing that comes between us is the fact that you're from England. You know what I mean? If you were like an American, you would be born and raised in the greatest country that was ever created since the beginning of mankind. And you'd be an American, which is would be just awesome.
Let's talk about. Okay, of course, McDonald's and
Calm down,
Hollywood, amazing, aren't they? Yeah. How is your obesity rate in the US been at the moment?
Oh, so now,
How has your foreign policy
so now you
been like over the
seriously
yeah,
pick on fat people.
so I say, yeah, the US, greatest nation in the world.
Yeah, got to pick on all those fat people in America. Well, I mean, at least you guys make good bread. You know what I mean? It's like shit. Like that's the thing that
And good chocolate, and good shoes, and
don't be adding the chocolate in. It was mostly the bread in our conversations. You were talking about how great
okay.
the bread is, and I'm actually starting to believe it because John Clark. I remember he used to always talk about working in the bakery, and he loved it. He would always talk about the young guys that would come in, and he had to teach them how to make bread properly. You know, so I'm thinking bread might be the best food that England makes, and that doesn't sound bad at all. I mean, it's actually a good thing. So we are done with these topics, and next week when we come back,
we could continue, but yeah,
we can do a recap on everything, and I can just like make little bullet points, like words that we could kind of talk about if you want to. Nothing like notes like this because I'll never want to do this again for Europe ever. Okay.
I haven't seen half the notes that you've created. You've only really,
I don't even.
yeah, sort of.
I don't even want to share them. I don't even want to share them. You know what I mean? It's like, oh my god! Like, I remember once she said, "Freaking, I need to post it in chat," and I'm like, "No, dude, I don't even think freaking I can post them all in chat. They might be a little bit too long." So, but we did get it done.
I was going to say, compile it all into a book and release that book.
I could do that. I've actually started doing stories for season 2. I wish I would have done the notes on season 1, and I think I did do the talking points, but I think I deleted them after we were done, and it wasn't really all that organized. To be fair, I mean, like, second season and the third season was way better than what the first one was because we were starting this out and we weren't really as organized as what we've become. So I think we've actually become more organized on this than what we were before. Getting through
sort of.
Well, maybe a little too organized. Just, but that's okay. I was glad that we were
Mm.
able to get through the history, the political history part of it, because I it's like I said before, I think people have really lost touch with this stuff, and there's people out there who actually don't believe freaking that that our history is important, and it's like I've always said it: if you forget the past, you're cursed to repeat it, and you take a look at the stuff we've
Mm.
discussed, and then you look at what's going on in the world today, and you tell me there isn't bells going off in your head. I know that I know they're there. There's shit that's right in front of your face. And all you got to do is open your mind and look at it, uh, and learn. Learn how to read, learn how to learn how to figure out what actually happened in the past. Things aren't as new and updated as what everybody thinks it is. Like a lot of these issues we have today aren't really new. They've been around for so long and they've persisted and they've been overlooked and not resolved. Or like here with these, what I've termed preventative logic and preventative strategies and integration. That's a European thing, with you guys. That's the stuff that I
Is
find
the European thing?
integration is.
Well, oh, yeah.
Integration is. They
Don't you have integration in the US?
No, we don't practice such foolishness. Now we have preventative
Mm.
logic. Now that's mostly in the police forces. That's the logic behind the police. They believe that preventative measures are needed to prevent crime from happening in the future, which to some extent I do agree with, but I think that it can get carried away. Like their logic is a little bit wrong, or quite a bit wrong. You know what I mean? I don't think that preventing somebody from jaywalking is going to stop them from freaking committing violent crime in the future. You know what I mean? But there's people who believe that because you you enforce those smaller laws, it stops bigger laws from happening in the future. You know what I mean?
On the point of integration, a lack of integration, if taken to its severe point, creates ghettoization, does it not?
Yeah. But yeah,
Yeah.
integration is. Well, I don't know. For me, we've got a federal government, and you know what I mean. And I think with Europe, that's what it's mostly about. They're trying to federalize your guys' countries, your
In
state.
the it's a sort of federal. Well, going back to the quotes I made earlier,
Mhm.
the Monet quote. Um, yeah, so federalized, the federal states of Europe.
And like I'm really glad that you mentioned Peel though, because that kind of filled the gaps for me, because Bismarck was one guy that really stood out to me. You know what I mean? A lot of people like to talk about Germany and they always bring up Adolf Hitler, when it comes to all this crazy stuff. But nobody ever looks at Bismarck, okay? Bismarck actually, uh, he, he preemptively planned wars ahead of time so that he could unify Germany. Okay, like he strategically went to war ahead of time in order to unify Germany. That was before he freaking created welfare plans or programs under a nationalist government. Okay, that's a trip. I mean, that really is. Historically, that is very, very strange. You
As
know?
we discussed the week before last.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very interesting, and nobody ever catches that. And then, like you mentioned, um, uh, Napoleon. Okay, the
Mm.
Napoleonic Wars, and it never dawned on me that this revanchism would have actually not started in the Weimar Republic, Weimar, but it would have been during the time that Napoleon occupied Berlin during the Napoleonic Wars. That's
Mm.
what set everything into motion. You know, so that was pretty interesting. So we are at 2 hours and 45 minutes. This next episode is going to be a recap. We're going to hang out and just chill and talk about the stuff we've discussed. And we've already started doing a little bit of that, I guess. But we can get into it, and we can make a little bit of time to actually talk about some of this stuff and get into it a little bit. Probably don't need it to be 3-4 hours long like we have before, but we can at least go back over some of it.
It's more of a reflection, something.
Right. You know, also, next year, me and you were talking about our plans, and I think that we really do need to take it another direction. We're running out of continents, you know, and I think we should talk about that further. We just brought it up just a little bit beforehand, but I think what we were talking about actually got even you excited. So I think we should.
Excited. I'm not sure excited is the right word, but
You found a little bit of excitement there. It's just we would have to, and we did a really good job this year. I just wanted to say that there aren't too many people that could have had this conversation the way me and you had. I think we did an excellent job, and we did it as a team. Took an Englishman and a freaking old dude from the United States to do it. Too bad Mr. Robot couldn't show up. See, that's the way. That's Australia for you, dude. They're always out freaking surfing. They're surfer dudes who freaking just ain't got time. You know what I mean? I'm serious. It's like hang out on the beach and talk to the girls and throw a little steak on the barbie. You know how they say it? On the Barbie or some shit.
I don't think all Australians do that.
Oh, okay. And besides, it wouldn't be steak.
That's a bit of a stereotype.
Is it? I'm sorry.
Lobster, seafood. Yeah.
So before we get out of here, you wanna give everybody your socials.
Okay, my social singular. Again, mines.com under the username Medworthy.
Okay, everybody, you can find me. You can find me at mines.com as well as Roger_Hansen. I'm also Roger_Hansen at DLive as well as Kick. On Twitch, I am Infamous1969. And on YouTube, you can find me, as well as on Rumble, you can find me at The Praetorian. Those are my channels. We are glad you guys could show up, and I hope you guys enjoyed not only this series, but this episode. If you please like, subscribe, share, make comments down in the comment sections, guys. Say hi and have a conversation, give your input, Tell us your thoughts on this. And I'm always somebody who likes to respond. So that being said, I hope you have a good day or night, morning, whatever time of the day it is for you. And Mark, go to sleep. Don't drink no more coffee. Sound good?
Uh, well, I don't know. It's I can get a couple hours, I suppose.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, is it worth me going to bed, or is it worth me just plugging on through?
Yeah, I know. Okay, so I'm going to end the stream, and we will talk to you guys later. We'll be back next week, and that'll be the last episode for the year. So that being said, we're out of here.